Hello everybody, this is Jim Feisty in Las Vegas, and it's happy Friday morning. We're looking forward to the big games on Sunday, of course. We've got college basketball throughout the weekend. We've got pro basketball throughout the weekend. Carroll is fine and won a game, but they really don't care, and that's the bottom line. I think they're like 6-27 against the spread as a favorite or something. It's ridiculous numbers. I don't know why anybody bets on them anymore. Just throwing money away. But Hank, good morning to you. I'm not sure what the weather's like down in Florida, but we're starting to get a little bit of wind here, and it's starting to get a little chillier. And we're not complaining. Chilly to us is 50 degrees, so it's still pretty nice. Good morning.
As long as they're not playing basketball outdoors, it doesn't matter.
That's
what
right.
the weather is like down here. It's a little bit of a chill, but it's going to warm up. Then the track will be dry tomorrow. They're getting ready for that Pegasus race next week, and I'll go out tomorrow to Gulfstream and do a lot of leg work. I'm going to meet with some of the trainers who are in there. Steve Asmussen is in town. I'll talk with him. We have a good relationship, and talk about Gun Runner, and also last week a couple of 3-year-olds emerged. The Sham Stakes was won by Jerry Hollendorfer's horse. Not the Sham Stakes, excuse me, the LeCompte in New Orleans. I picked that horse on our service, and he had shipped in from the West Coast. The Baffert horse, McKinsey, they took the blinkers adjustment, and he had a big race. So top 2 horses are on the West Coast again. Usual suspects are around, so I'm going to take a look at the 3-year-olds. But the big race is the big stakes race next week. They had trouble getting entries for it. It's $1 million entry per participant, and that's why it's the richest race. But they're having trouble filling it. There's a lack of number of quality horses in the race. They're having trouble selling tickets because they got a big price tag on it. I got a call yesterday asking me, where do I want to sit? And they're comping a lot, 25 people in the simulcast room, so they couldn't sell the seats there. And I'm told this might be the last year for it at Gulfstream. If they have it again next year, it'll probably move to the West Coast. It lacks the appeal of last year's race, where you had the 2 great horses going against each other, Arrogant coming in, and this year you have Gun Runner. And who's going to beat him? I think there's a couple of possibilities, and I'll have that for our followers next week. The other thing is, there's the weather. I don't think is going to be a huge factor this weekend. Since you brought up the subject of how the weather is down here, the big interest is how's the weather going to be in Philadelphia and Washington. Supposed to warm up a little bit there. I don't think weather is going to be a factor in those 2 games.
No, it doesn't sound like it, and that's why some of the numbers, have been inching up. But of course, the big question for the Patriots is what's going on with Tom Brady. Is this one of these little game-playing things that they do on a normal basis to keep the interest high, or is he really hurt?
No. You don't have your quarterback skipping the Thursday practice, which is the most important practice of the week. That's not typical of any team. So obviously there is a slight problem with them. And they've got Brian Hoyer hanging out in case they need him on Sunday, because they only have one other quarterback on the roster right now, and he's no big deal. So they would, if they activated Hoyer, you would know that there's a problem. So keep an eye on that over the weekend.
Well, Brian Hoyer's been around a number of years, and he seems to have when he gets to the bigger stages, he seems to fold. Well, one interesting thing about Brian Hoyer, I think he's the only quarterback in the last decade that's had a winning record, maybe even 2 decades, that had a winning record with the Cleveland Browns when he started there, which is quite interesting. But I don't think personally. I think Brady will be fine, and I think he'll play on Sunday. They might have to alter the game plan a little bit because you're playing up against pretty good defense, very physical defense in the Jaguars. So there's going to be a news conference in a couple of hours, and we'll all learn a lot more because I think Tom Brady's going to speak at that conference, and we'll learn a few things.
I Belichick already said it. I don't know what he said though. I've been out of pocket for a couple hours.
Well, we talk about the weather, and we don't think about basketball as being affected by weather, but it actually is. And the way even though the games are played indoors, it affects fan support because sometimes the fans can't get to the games or they don't care to go out to get to the games. And the teams that are traveling to the games can have extra problems. So a lot of times home court advantage in basketball really means the traveling team disadvantage. So it does have an effect, and it's something that handicappers and all the bettors out there should consider that. The team is traveling, even if it's 400 or 500 miles. How are they going to do it? Are they flying? Are their flight being delayed? Are there long layovers? If they're going in a bus, then what do they have to deal with? Snow, sleet, ice, rain, wind, all those things. So it does have an effect, and I use that in my handicapping when I look at a basketball game when it's in bad weather areas, because it certainly can have an effect on the traveling team a lot, and the home team if they don't get fan support. So that's just my 2 cents for that. Anything you want to break down in the?
Hey, if you want to talk weather, I'll get you Brian Norcross, okay?
Okay.
I got a connection with him. He'd be happy to come on.
Well, let's do it. We'll change it up a little bit. We'll bring in a little extra flavor. That'd be good. Anything you want to discuss about these games, Hank?
Yeah, sure. I want to talk about some of the trends involved. I think there's a key in the Minnesota-Philadelphia game that I think is very important statistic, and that's the Minnesota defense. Last week Foles had a number of third down conversions, but going up against Minnesota, they lead the league in third down conversions on defense at 25%. That's a very significant statistic. If that means that Foles is going to have a difficult time, and they may have a difficult time on third downs. So it's incumbent on Minnesota to stop the run for Philadelphia, and Philadelphia's running game will be key in this. And manageable third downs will be important against the top third down defense in the league right now. That Minnesota defense is very good. And the key to it, of course, is Rhodes, but they also have a great safety. Rhodes will tell you that. And I think this is really a key element in that game. I'm in a great position because I wound up getting the 3 points without having to lay a price. It was just the usual vig coming into today. So I don't know what that tells you about the betting on the game, but going into last night, if you wanted Philadelphia, you had to lay more than the normal vig.
Yeah, that's right. That's actually correct. When I break this game, honestly, there's a lot of ways to look at the game. In most games that are like that, but to me, the Vikings are the better team at this moment with this quarterback matchup. That would not be the case, in my opinion, if Wentz were the quarterback. But then again, if you had, there's a lot of things that could change with injuries. But when you look at, you pointed that out, that third down conversion stat that you pointed out, Hank, is extremely important. But the key here is, well, one of the keys, not the key, a key, is, Minnesota is playing on the road. They're playing outdoors on the road, and Philadelphia's resting in their own shop and home beds, and they're home again, and they got their home court advantage, home field advantage in the crowd. I like Case Keenum long-term better than Nick Foles. But when you basically, the game to me looks like it's a pick-em. Instead, Minnesota, I understand, is favored, but what that kind of means to me, if you put this on a neutral field, I mean, the spread would be quite high for Minnesota to be quite a big favorite, and I don't really think there's that much difference. I think the spread is a little bit out of line. That doesn't mean that you should run out and bet Philadelphia because the spread's out of line, because you still have to pick the winner of the game. It's likely the winner of the game is going to cover the spread. That's usually the case anyway. But, being a 3 or 3.5 point favorite as they were or are on the road at Philly is a real billboard or bulletin board material for Philadelphia. It's a disrespect, sort of, and Philadelphia uses that to their advantage psychologically. And I keep thinking about what if this game was played on a neutral field. If this were the Super Bowl, well, Minnesota be 7-point favorite, and if they're a 7-point favorite, I know who I'm playing. So you got to look at it from a value perspective, and then the situational perspective of who you think's the better team and who will be the better team this Sunday.
I don't think there is a value perspective in this game because it's, first of all, Minnesota is traveling, on a normal week's schedule. When I worked with the Greek years ago, and we would do his selections on CBS, he had a number of criteria. The first one was quarterback. And there was, defense, a line play, injuries. None of those factors are important in this game. Injuries, the only major injury is Peters, and he's with Philadelphia. They don't have their left tackle, their normal left tackle on offense. That's a factor. If you look at the quarterbacks, the true backup is Foles. Keenum's no longer a backup. He's now a quarter starting stature. If you look at his numbers this year, there's only one quarterback he can compare to, and that's Brady. Otherwise, his numbers are as good as anybody's, and that's over a number of starts. And he hasn't been affected by where he plays. Minnesota has another factor in this. You talk about the running backs for Philadelphia. Since McKinnon has arrived as a running back, Minnesota is over the fact that they lost their starting quarterback and their starting running back in the first week of the season. And you look at the difference in these quarterbacks, it's significant. Foles was not the choice of the Rams when he was there. He's bounced around a lot. And Keenum has been, Keenum's record has, he started 11 games with the Rams. I know you can say what you want about Fisher, but his offensive people thought that Keenum was the guy who he would choose over Foles. And I think that the number's right in this game, to be honest with you. And if anything, I think it's gonna be pretty stable. It's kind of stabilized. But Minnesota has better talent. I think the Philadelphia coach has done a very good job this year. But Minnesota has good offensive coordinator. They've got a very good head coach. They're going to be very prepared. So when you look at special teams, does anybody have an advantage there? Defensive line, you've got Cox, who is a difference maker for Philadelphia, and you've got a number of guys from Minnesota. And I'll tell you, the difference in secondaries is pretty significant for Minnesota. They've got an edge at cornerback, and they got an edge at safety.
That's a pretty good breakdown, Hank.
By the way, the reason I'm playing Carolina in the game, or Carolina, they're gone. The reason I'm playing Philadelphia in the game is because I have Minnesota at 16-1, so I'm covering my tail.
No, we understand that. You're actually, you really feel the Vikings are the better team, but you're hedging a little bit with Philadelphia plus the points. That's
Yeah, I have them at the number you like. I got them at Pick'em.
Right. Okay. Well, you got Minnesota to win the division, right, or the Super Bowl. What number is?
Win the conference. I have them to win the conference.
Right. Well, that is Pick'em. Okay. How about the other game? What can we talk about with this other game with this Brady issue?
Yeah, well, when we were talking yesterday, you brought up a great play, and that is that you can play, and I've checked it out, and you can play New England to win the Super Bowl right now at a very attractive price. I don't know what it is today, but at the time that you looked at it, I think it was just regular pick'em, and I think it's up to just under 2-1 right now. It's not a bad play.
No, actually, I'll tell you what the price is right now. If you give me a second here, we could have some dead air time, but if I can find the number right now.
Well, I think it went up with the injury to Brady. But when we last checked, it was like $1.17.
Well, actually, that would make it go down. Actually. They took the futures prices off the board.
Well, it had gone up, from the opening line, it had gone up to $1.20, and then it went down to $1.17.
Yeah, and Hank, at this moment, they took it off the board. It's because of the Brady injury, of course. Yeah, it's gone. It's not there right now. So, and with the line dropping, I mean, the line is 7 now in a lot of places.
Yeah.
So it probably wouldn't even be 117. It would probably be more like even money. But if what I would say is, along with what you said, I believe Brady will play, and I think he'll play effectively. And we'll find out more today. It's a guess on my part, but based on history of Brady and Belichick and the things that they do, they're tacticians and they know how to mess with your mind. But I think what happens if they win, and they're a big favorite to do so, then all the advantages are there for them, but except on the defensive side of the ball. Then they go to Minnesota and they'll play Minnesota in Minnesota. Now it's not going to be a true home court advantage or home field advantage for Minnesota, because the ticket disbursement is different than it would be in a regular season game. But they are playing in their own confines, their own town. They're sleeping in their own beds, and it is a home field advantage to a degree. So the Patriots would be favored in that game. And the estimate was they'd be a 3-point favorite in that game in the Super Bowl against Minnesota, and a 6.5-point favorite over Philadelphia. So those numbers have been up for a week or so. Well, since the last games were over. But now, of course, those numbers are off the board because of this Brady injury. So I expect if he announces today that he will play on Sunday and he's feeling okay and everything else, these lines will all start coming back up on the board. And that's what I would look for. But I would bet New England to win the Super Bowl, because here's another hedge. If they're going to be favored in the game, and according to the odds that we have been up and playable the last week or so, you would end up being able to take the dog, whether it be Philadelphia or Minnesota, at a +3, 3.5, or 6.5 if we're Philly, and have a nice middle. So if you believe they're going to beat the Jaguars straight up, even money, you're laying pick'em to 120 on the Patriots, and then next week you're taking 3.5 to 6.5 depending on your opponent. So you get a nice setup for a middle side or middle of the game. So if you're a smart money player and you're in the game to win money, you do like Hank's doing with this hedge he's doing in this particular event. You got a little bit of a hedge, you know you're going to win money one way or the other. That's my advice.
I have a question for you that's very important. If they play the game in Minnesota, what happens to the Viking and the Horn?
I don't know the answer to that question. Maybe you have the answer.
They'll find a way to get him in. If they have to pay his way.
Well,
the question is, will the league allow him on the field? That will be an issue. You watch. I'll bet on that.
Well, like you said, where there's a will, there's a way. They'll find a way to get him in.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Well, Hank, unless you have
know,
some...
there's one thing as far as the trend. This is the 7th straight championship game that New England has played in. And they've been at home for a number of those. The one team that's given them difficulty was, in these last 6 of them, was Baltimore. Although they're 4-2 against the number in these last 6 games, and the 2 was Baltimore. And Baltimore is similar to Jacksonville in that they, were built around defense, and they had Flacco as a quarterback, and Flacco at that time was playing pretty well, and they had great special teams, better special teams than they're going to be up against this game. And they had, they had a tremendous defense, a very smart defense, very well coached. And they came into the game in very good shape. The one thing that I'm a little concerned about with Jacksonville's defense this week is that they gave up 42 points, and I know they went into an adjustment after the early part of the game against Pittsburgh, but they still gave up, and they had 2 sensational catches. But they gave up 42 points. And then a couple of weeks before that, they went out west, and they gave up a bunch of points against San Francisco. And the quarterback in that game was a former New England player. That scares me a little bit if I'm going to take Jacksonville.
Well, I agree with you. We can't forget that Jacksonville and Blake Bortles have been highly criticized all year long. Last week, it was pretty obvious that I'm going to bash Tomlin again. He didn't get his team ready for that game.
No,
Le'Veon Bell didn't even show up till late. They were talking about New England. They didn't care about Jacksonville, and they got their ass smoked. And that's Tomlin. I think Tomlin should have been fired. That's my own personal opinion. Whether you like him, you don't like him, I think he did a bad job, and I think he does a bad job consistently. He looks ahead to teams. He takes teams lightly. He shouldn't be there. But they did.
I don't think that you can argue that point. You know something? He started talking about playing New England again a month ago.
I know.
And they played that team like they typically do against the team that they play down to. And the defense was terrible. They made no adjustment in the game. They never put a spy on Bortles, who killed him with his legs. And they got off to the bad start. They were like a racehorse. They were a significant favorite that doesn't get out of the gate and falls 15 lengths behind and makes up a ton of ground in the stretch. But because he was so far behind, he just gets nailed at the finish. And that's the way that game was last week.
Yeah. no argument. There's a lot of coaching changes. One of these days we should have, after the Super Bowl, we should have a look ahead to coaching issues because a lot of people are changing hands. We're running up at the end. We're only allowed so many minutes in the podcast or it won't upload. So Hank, we're pretty much at the close of that. But our picks are available at jimfeist.com. Hank's been having a wonderful season. And I had a rocky week in college hoops, 4 or 5 days, and last night I bounced back. So hopefully that turns around. That's the way it is in gambling. You have your ups and downs, and you have to have the mental strength to overcome it. But Hank, thank you very much. We'll talk to you again on Monday, and good luck this weekend.
I apologize for St. Peter's last night, but I came back pretty good. I had Oregon State. They won, and I had a couple of good winners. By the way, a lot of the top teams have been losing in the last few days, and Gonzaga was another one. They got beat last night by St. Mary's. So did good dogs.
So did Wichita. I mean, it's a different year. It's going to be a hell of a March Madness for sure. Hank, I got to run. We're running up against the time clock. Thanks, Hank.
All right, all the best this weekend.
Everybody out there, good luck.